The Raiders once again blew a 17-0 lead, this time versus the Jaguars. This is what happens in Vegas. Let's talk about it. What up, Raider Nation? I am Neal. I appreciate you guys for joining me as always. For those who have not subscribed, go ahead and make sure you hit subscribe, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or if you're watching on YouTube. I'd hate for you to miss an episode. I love chopping it up with you guys. You guys are great in the comments as well. And the only way to do that is by being subscribed, turn on the notifications and all those good things. If you've already done that, thank you. I appreciate it. Today, we're going to talk about, one, the Raiders lost to the Jaguars, who going into this game, this was one that we expected the Raiders to win. We expected this to be the bounce back game that we were looking for, especially after coming off the bad loss to the Saints, and it's not how it played out. Not at all. We have a lot to talk about, not just the recap for that game, but we also have to talk about a player who was added, a player who was cut, a player went to the IR, and we have a game coming up against the Colts, which is a weird one. It's really weird, mostly from both sides, actually. It's a really weird one. Let's get into that one as well. Let's go ahead and just pull up first last week's game. The Raiders lost to the Jaguars 20-27, as you can see here. Derek Carr, 259, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Once again, no interceptions, which is good to see. But a lot of Raider fans are starting to get frustrated. Derek Carr has not done anything to stand out, to lead the team to victory in the fourth quarters and, the second half of games. And it's becoming frustrating because you're watching other quarterbacks do that. You're watching teams with new coaches, new quarterbacks, whatever the situation may be, and they're still getting it done. They're still making it happen. And so fans are getting a little frustrated here that Derek Carr is not, being more than a game manager at this point. He's not just getting by. Even if he's not throwing interceptions, he's still not, he's not leading the team to victory when they need it most. The Raiders had a couple opportunities in this game at the end of the game to actually, tie the game up, and again, didn't happen. And of course, that's a lot of times going to fall on Derek Carr. If you ask me, from all of this, from the entire offense, the defense, this comes down to more than just players. I've spoken in, we've talked about this, right? Like, the team is not that much different from a player perspective. The main players, the key players, the starters, we've actually added more players who are better than we've lost this time around. So this has to really fall on the coaching in terms of how this all is playing out recently. And we'll look more at this. But again, Derek Carr, just an average game, no interceptions, which is a big thing. But overall, just an average game. Nothing from this game that goes, that people want something to really attach themselves to. If you think about like Justin Fields, right, in Chicago right now, he's not throwing for crazy yards, but he's running all over the place. He's doing all this leader type stuff that leader characteristics that you would see from a quarterback. And so that kind of stuff is exciting for fans. And so when you don't see that kind of fight in a quarterback necessarily, or that kind of ability and the type of plays that he's making, those are the kind of things that I think fans want. And the more and more as those kind of players come into the league, especially ones who can run, young guys who can extend plays and do all this crazy stuff, it looks like, magic out there. As these guys become more and more prevalent in the league, you're going to see guys like Derek Carr, if they're not winning games, they're kind of like not only not winning, but they're also not like doing these fantastic things. They're kind of boring in a sense to compare it to those other quarterbacks they are. So I think that's kind of part of this as well with the frustration, but it's also just been a really long time with Derek Carr as the Raiders quarterback. It's his entire career. And it's, some fans are just always going to blame the quarterback win or lose. And so in this case, he gets a lot of heat. He's always gotten a lot of heat. So in the case of Derek Carr, if the team's not winning, even not throwing interceptions and stuff isn't enough for fans. Let's move down to the running game. Josh Jacobs, 17 carries, 67 yards, no touchdowns. Again, this isn't good enough. This isn't what we need. 17 carries. I've spoken about this countless times on this show now at this point. If he doesn't get over 20 plus carries, 25 carries, this isn't good enough. He didn't get the opportunity to do what he needed to do. There was some big plays that he had. They were called back on penalties. Again, this team, whenever they get behind, stop running the ball. I don't know what it is about the coaches. I don't know why they're making these play calls, but they're definitely not running Josh Jacobs enough. Again, as usual, no one else is really running the ball besides Josh Jacobs, which I'm fine with. Brandon Bolden had to carry here. Zamir White lost some yards on the carry. So nothing concerned with that. This is not Josh Jacobs' fault. This is totally this team's fault, the play calling's fault, falling behind later in the games. Josh Jacobs is always the victim here in terms of that kind of stuff. But again, not enough carries for Josh Jacobs. It's ridiculous, these numbers here. Then if we look down here at the receiving, now you look at Davante Adams' numbers, you're like, what? 10 receptions, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was like all in the first half. You see a problem with that? That was like all in the first half. When you have a player getting 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, going crazy, how does that guy not get the ball 10 more times in the second half? How does that guy not get another touchdown, another 100 yards, another 75 yards, whatever the case may be? They totally stopped. Now, you're thinking Neal. I mean, he can't do everything. Oh, no, he actually could. He was doing everything. But he just wasn't getting targeted the rest of the game, wasn't getting enough, wasn't making catches, dropping the, not making the catches needed. But again, you don't go away from what's working. Josh Jacobs works. Davante Adams works. There should be no game where those kind of guys go off in the first half of the game and then don't in the second half of the game. There should be no situation where Davante Adams has those kind of numbers in the first half and they're not duplicated in the second half. I'm not saying he should have had 400 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the targets and the type of play calls, all that kind of stuff should be duplicated. Foster Moreau, again, a couple of catches, decent yardage. He's not Darren Waller. He's not going to be Darren Waller. I know a lot of fans like Foster Moreau. He's a guy. I mean, he's not doing anything spectacular. He's not special in any way. He's getting his job done, but it's not Darren Waller. What you would expect from him. Which the Darren Waller situation is weird. We'll look at that as well in a second. Once we get after we're done recapping this game here. But Hunter Renfrow, just a couple catches. Nothing enough here. This is not enough. And again, Davante Adams, the numbers you're looking at, he did all of this in the first half. So whatever you're seeing here is first half type stuff and not anything else after that, because basically in the second half, this offense did not exist. So everything you're seeing here is basically first half stuff. On defense, Blake Martinez was actually the leader in tackles. Denzel Perryman, the linebackers, of course, getting in the mix here. Deron Harmon, Rock Ya-Sin had a pretty active game. Jonathan Abram, who we'll talk about in a second. Anthony Aver, man, again, I think I spoke about it last week, but he's not Hobbs, man. It just is what it is. He's out there. I'm not saying he's necessarily terrible, but he's clearly not as skilled as Hobbs. And so it's very apparent that we're missing this guy. Rock Ya-Sin is the starting cornerback at this point, like the number 1, and he's not Hobbs either. So that secondary is definitely affected by the loss of Hobbs, no question about it. He is the game changer of this secondary. Unfortunately, there's multiple first-round picks in the secondary. There's all kinds of players who are drafted to do something here, and they're not. So it is what it is. Hobbs is the best player in that backfield, and he's hurt, and he's not here, and so it is what it is. It's being affected by it for sure. Again, this defense, no sacks, no interceptions, not even Max Crosby. It's not for a lack of effort for Max. He's doing everything he can, but it's just not happening. Chandler Jones, another frustrating guy on this team. I don't know how many times we're going to talk about this guy not doing anything in terms of, if he was just a vet, if he was just a guy getting paid a little bit of money and, we brought him in here to see what he could do, that'd be fine. But that's not the case here. Chandler Jones paid a lot of money. He was supposed to be a big acquisition for this team, and it's just not happening. I don't want to hear the talks about double teams. I don't want to hear the talks about sacks coming bunches. I don't want to hear none of that stuff. Chandler Jones should be playing better. There's no other argument to be made here in terms of that. Trayvon, another guy who's just disappointing. Like, he's just not – a lot of these guys just are not fitting the standard and the expectations for them. It's really disappointing. It really is. I didn't think I was going to be this upset about the defense coming into this season, but no question about it. This is not just an offensive thing. This is a defensive problem as well. Not to mention, when you see 27 points, you're like, the defense gave up a lot of points. Yeah, they did. Some teams, the offense keeps up with the defense. So if the defense does give up 20 points, 21 points, 20 plus points, the offense is capable of keeping up with it. Some offenses are able to do that. The Raiders have not been able to do that. They score a bunch of points in the first half and then they don't exist in the second half. And that, makes it harder for the defense too. So I don't want to put, the whole entire defensive thing on there, but it's no question a problem as well. Tom Pelissaro says the surprise, the Raiders are releasing first round safety Jonathan Abram. He was released. Yes, folks. He was cut from the team. A lot of fans don't feel like Jonathan Abram has lived up to the bill. Clearly, the organization doesn't think so either. He certainly is not. He hasn't. If you watch the games, he's not the game changer. He's not anything you're looking for. He struggled. I like Jonathan Abram a lot, actually. I think he's a good dude. I had high hopes for him coming into the team. A lot of us fans did. but he hasn't done the job. You have to assume they tried to trade him. They couldn't trade him before the deadline. So here he is being cut. eh, I don't think it's gonna be a major difference. I don't think there's anyone there ready to step up and like fill his shoes. I guess it means more Harmon. It means Trayvon moving around a little bit. So I guess that's good in that sense. That those guys are gonna get a little more burn. But Abram himself, it's another disappointing thing for the Mayock Gruden picks. They haven't played out. Cleveland Farrell, I think, and Josh Jacobs, maybe the only two like left in those early picks, and you know how that's gone. Fifth year options not picked up. Josh Jacobs is by far the best player out of all of them, and I hope that there is a way for this team to figure out able to re-sign him. I think it'd be a real loss to not pick him up, not re-sign him going into next season. But here we are. All these picks have not lived up to the hype, and this is a big part of it. When you don't hit on those early picks, especially as many as the Raiders had in those drafts, you're just setting the team back. So I did want to share that. Jonathan Abram was cut again from a fan perspective. I'm going to miss him. I wish him luck. I hope he flourishes wherever he goes next and in life, whether it's football, whether it's something else. You got to assume he goes somewhere else football wise. He's not like an old guy or anything. So, but I hope he flourishes. No hard feelings from this Raider fan. It just didn't work out, and understandable the move that the team made. Unfortunately, at the same token, we signed cornerback Sidney Jones. This is kind of cool, right? Like Sidney Jones was an early draft pick as well. Didn't live up to the hype where he was drafted. Has actually played pretty well with the Seahawks. Like I like to when a player gets signed or traded to the Raiders, whatever it is, I try to look at what that fan base was saying. Although they probably could be frustrated also by the player. Like we have, like for instance, with Abram, like right, like when a team signs him, Raider fans aren't going to have like a ringing endorsement for him. It just is what it is. So I try to look and see, like, how the fans reacted on that team. Do they have a ringing endorsement for the guy? Are they kind of bummed that he's leaving? Are they like, we don't really care. He wasn't that good. For Sidney Jones, it actually seemed pretty positive. I looked at, I was even on YouTube looking at a lot of Seahawks fans who have YouTube shows similar to this one, but for the Seahawks, and articles and everything. And nobody really said anything bad about Sidney Jones. So it just seems like they had a depth situation with Seattle where they have lots of good corners right now, a lot of good young players. And so Sidney Jones just kind of got caught up in the numbers game. And he actually did nothing notable that was bad. The fans seemed pretty bummed, and the numbers and everything showed that he was a pretty good player there. So he actually revived his career in Seattle, which is good to see. So hopefully he can do some damage with the Raiders. Hopefully we can make up for the loss of Hobbs right now. I would like to see Sidney Jones kind of put in right away because the rest of the defense is a little frustrating to watch. So any help is welcomed, and I can't imagine he does much worse than what we've already been dealing with. So I would like to see Sidney Jones, pushed into the game as quickly as possible. Also, in a corresponding move, you see there Divine Diablo placed on the reserve injured list. This is unfortunate. He's been like one of the top tacklers in the league right now, and it'll be a hit for the Raiders. But Blake Martinez has done okay, in substitution. Either way, besides Perriman, no one's like doing anything playmaking difference. No one seems to be a real force. And just the defense in total has been kind of weak, man. It's just been really underwhelming. The offense has its moments. The defense had moments here and there, but super underwhelming overall. And this team needs to be rejuvenated with players. So whether it's free agents next season, whether you crush it in the draft, something has to go right because there's a lot of help needed. It's not just like an offensive line thing, which a lot of people quickly point out for the Raiders. It's not that. And honestly, it's going to be a lot of fun to look towards the Raiders offseason this year because you're going to wonder what way this team moves, whether we see how bad the rest of the season goes or how positive it goes. We're going to, have a maybe a really clear direction by offseason or maybe really confusing. We'll see. Raiders this week are facing a coach who has never coached above the high school level, a play caller who has never called plays, and a QB who has never won a start in the NFL. This is looking towards the Colts game, obviously. This is crazy. This is nuts. This is an out-of-hand headline. The reason why I wanted to mention this really quick is that it feels like every day, or at least after every loss, Raider fans, content creators, whatever, are calling for Josh McDaniels to be fired, this and that. I get like that's like people's shtick at this point. This is their go-to move. Again, I've mentioned last week, it gets a lot of likes, it gets a lot of attention, it gets a lot of conversation. So I respect it. But overall, it's not gonna happen. Like, they just need to, anyone realistic about this knows that Mark Davis is not gonna fire Josh McDaniels right now. He's already dealt with him to this point. Losses could pile up and he's still gonna keep riding with him. I doubt he goes back on his word that he's already said to the media and to the public that, this is someone that he's riding with for years. I also seen others mention when you see Josh McDaniels talk, it sounds like he's going to be around for a while, at least in his mind. So I'm assuming the contract was a pretty long one. I mean, Mark Davis gave John Gruden a long one, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case here for Josh McDaniels as well. John Gruden. I mean, if John Gruden got a good one, Josh McDaniels probably got a good one, and it is what it is. He's not going to be fired, right? So, but here we got this situation now where the Raiders are playing against Jeff Saturday, the new head coach of the Colts, who also shit on the Raiders on Twitter before he became the coach of the Colts. So that should be some locker room motivation for the players. But again, the play caller has never called plays. See here, Colts interim coach Jeff Saturday is expected to have a 30-year-old pass game specialist assistant. Quarterbacks coach Parks Frazier serve as the offensive play caller. I'm sure this guy's a smart guy. It seems like he's a hard worker. He's risen up throughout the organization. Shout out to him. Much respect. Again, I'm not going to knock a successful, hardworking individual, but going into this game for the Raiders, on one end, you have Josh McDaniels, head coach of the Raiders, who has won multiples of Super Bowls with the Patriots. He's had head coaching gigs before. He's been in other teams as well as offensive coordinators and whatnot. So he's looked at as a guru. You have a defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, who's looked at as a very high-level defensive coordinator. You have coaches all over the team, right? You have a veteran team, veteran quarterback, top-of-the-line wide receiver, one of the best running backs in the league, all these things, right? And on the other side is a new head coach who's never coached in the NFL before, an offensive play caller who's never called plays in the NFL before. That's a mess. Not to mention Ellinger's their quarterback. He's never won a game. He looked horrible last week. Everything was bad for them last week. If you look at their game last week, they lost to the Patriots 26-3. They got smoked. Now, the Patriots obviously are a decent team where I'm not comparing the Raiders to them. But when you look at the stats here, Ellinger had almost less than 100 yards passing, no touchdowns, and interception. He was the leading rusher for the team, although I think Jonathan Taylor will probably be back. So that will make things better for the Colts in that sense. And even when you look at the stats for the game, like the Colts were sacked 9 times by the Patriots. They threw an interception, as I mentioned. It was just all bad. So this is with their actual head coach. He's gone now. So now you got a guy who's never coached before, right? Like former Colts center, offensive lineman Jeff Saturday is the head coach, just out the blue. This is a mess. This is craziness. And it should be way worse than what the Raiders are dealing with. If Josh McDaniels loses that game, I would consider that the biggest upset possibly in football. Like, I don't know how else you want to coin that. I don't know how else you want to look at it. But when you're playing against a new head coach who's never coached in the NFL, not talking about like, oh, this guy was an assistant, an offensive guru, this, that. He's never coached in the NFL. You're going against a play caller who's never called plays. And I don't care how smart he is or, how talented he is or how hard he works. He's never called plays for an offense. And you have a quarterback like Ellinger. There's no way that team is supposed to win. There's no way it's supposed to be close. That's just a fact. If Josh McDaniels loses that game, this is where y'all might get me. You might have me say that he's going to get fired if he loses this game. Because this is about the only one where if you walk away from this game, this team will be embarrassed. From the top to the bottom, this organization will be truly embarrassed. I don't know how you come back from a loss to the Colts. I really don't. So if McDaniel loses to the Colts, I can see him being fired. It's that bad. And if he doesn't get fired, he's bulletproof, folks. I hate to break it to you. You can stop with the tweets. You can stop with the videos. You can stop with all the, slamming Josh McDaniels. I understand you're getting views from it, and I understand you're getting a lot of people that agree with you. But at the end of the day, you're just basically talking, you're just making stuff up. Because if he gets past this game after a loss, he might as well be the owner at that point. They might as well just give him the organization because there is no excuse to lose to this team. I do want to mention again, the Darren Waller thing is interesting, right? Like, he hasn't played in a while. This injury has lingered on more than people thought. We got these tweets here. This is from Diva. Who wrote this again? I want to make sure I get proper credit. Levi Damon. This is from the press conference today. At this point, everyone is wondering what the deal is with his hamstring injury. I think we're in the same boat, McDaniel said of Waller's weekly unknown status. You'll see him today. We'll see him today, and hopefully he takes another step forward. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree, and it's very difficult to predict some of these things. Muscles and those kind of things are always a little tricky, especially for a player whose number one skill or certainly one of his top traits is his ability to run, get open, and go. So it's not, I don't know. There's no timetable. Some guys come back a little quicker than others. He's confused. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know what's going on. The team doesn't know what's going on. No one knows what's going on. A mess. Again, re-signed. This is Darren Waller, re-signed. It's not good. It's not good from a team standpoint. It's a bad sign. Regardless, guys, listen, the Raiders are in trouble. The team is in shambles right now. It's not looking good. There's still a chance for this team to turn it around, though. There's still hope. Again, I know I even talked about it in the comments with somebody else who's in the YouTube comments. You know, a lot of people are trying to crap on the Raiders right now. It's a good chance for them to do that. So I get it. I guess you guys got free shots to take. So you're taking them. I respect them. I'm not mad at it. I understand. You know, you like to kick people while they're down, kick teams while they're down. And this is a great opportunity to, to do that. So my thing is this, like, it's not over. The Raiders still have a chance for sure. A lot of teams have new coaches or new offenses or new defenses or new quarterbacks or young quarterbacks, and they're doing well. I get it. But every situation isn't the same. Some are just something's right, something's working right over there, and something's not working right with the Raiders. One thing I will say is you've seen the press conference afterwards. Derek Carr got cut off, which is weird. I don't know if that was intentional or not. We can get in our conspiracy bag if we want to. But he was mentioning something about he has things he would say, but right now might not be the right time to say it. It was weird. It was very like him and Davante Adams were talking, before he came out. Davante Adams was kind of throwing some slander out there, and said that if things are working, kind of you don't break it. Don't try to fix what's not broken. And it seemed kind of like a shot at Josh McDaniels a little bit and the coaching staff with the play calling. So I like that those guys are talking up a little bit because I think it puts pressure on these coaches. No doubt in my mind, if you said, Neal, right now, what's going on? What's wrong? What's wrong with these Raiders? I would 100% put it on the coaches. I don't think the players are great. Like, I don't think we have like a Super Bowl championship players in terms of the defense has a few holes. The offensive line kind of is not so great. There are players who for sure should be on a championship team. That this team can definitely be molded into one. But I think the coaches are kind of outsmarting themselves right now. You heard Josh McDaniels in the press conference say, just because something worked in the first half doesn't mean it's going to work in the second half. I honestly, I think he goes in there thinking, we had a bunch of success with this. Now you have to switch it up. We have to change it going into the second half. And the defense, same thing. Like, we've had okay success with this. Now we have to switch up the defense. And I don't think that's always right. I think if it's working for you in the first half, you don't stop doing it until it stops working. That's how I look at it. You definitely can add some things, switch things up a little bit, add some wrinkles into it, throw something at them a little differently. I would not switch everything up, and that's what it feels like is happening. I'm not a coach, though. I'm not in their, in their coach's room or in the locker room at halftime. It does feel like things are being switched around a little too much, and it feels like the players are also kind of getting at that now. So I do like that the Raiders are speaking up a little bit. I don't think it means they're losing the locker room. I think it means that the players and the leaders, because it's not just the players, it's the leaders on the team applying pressure on these coaches. You also have, situations where recently Darren Waller said like the Josh McDaniels playbook is not as easy to pick up as in some cases, but again, every playbook is a little different. Everyone has a little different stuff they're calling, but I don't think it's enough to say a playoff team is now sucking because of Josh McDaniels' offense and how hard it might be to pick up. Same with the defense. I just don't think it's a good excuse. I think these guys are smarter than that, and you're not giving them enough credit if you blame the players for not picking up the offense quick enough as why you're attributing the loss to the Raiders for these recent losses against teams they should be beating. I always like to repeat this. If you're looking for Raider news, but negative news, if you want to hear Josh McDaniels is supposed to be fired every single week, or if you want to hear that Derek Carr sucks and he's not a good enough quarterback, or if you want to hear that this team needs to blow the whole team up and start all over, if you're looking to hear that kind of stuff, this is not the correct Raider platform for you. If you're looking for critical, holding the Raiders accountable, but at the same time, finding the positives, finding the good things, looking at the stories and narratives, not just stats and data, looking at all these kind of things, then you're in the right place. If you're in the right place, which a lot of you are, and I appreciate it, every single week we do better and better. The numbers go up and up. Like the comments continue to go up, which I love. The comments might be my favorite part of this whole thing. That's why I mentioned if you're only listening on like Apple Podcasts, at least subscribe on YouTube. You don't have to watch the video. You may be at work or something when you listen, so I get not watching, but at least get in the comments. It's a lot of fun to chop it up with you guys. Whether you are happy with the Raiders, not happy with the Raiders, well, no one should be happy with the Raiders, but whether you're a complete hater of the Raiders right now, whether you're a fan of another team, that's fine too. I know a lot of fans want to come in here and argue kind of with us. I'm all with it. I love chopping it up with you guys. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Or if you're just listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, those kind of things, it's all gravy. Just make sure you're subscribed. If you are subscribed on YouTube and watching on YouTube, make sure you comment. I love talking with you guys. Hit like, share it with a Raider Nation member. Let's get this thing out there more and more. Again, it's positive vibes. Although the Raiders are struggling, it's always positive vibes. And you guys know what it is. What happens in Vegas is Raiders football.